Well, there's a lot of evaluation that goes on in selecting a site. You have to look at meet with the city that we have infrastructure available. That's sewer, water, electricity, all those sort of things that go with the building. You also then start looking at, do some soil analysis to see if there's any unique things to that site. Is the soil's going to be bad? Is that going to cost you extra to do it? So you evaluate the soils. You also look at topography. Is there so much topography that you can't have your practice fields? How it's going to sit on the site? So you got to look at all those pieces. And what the infrastructure of roads and what the future roads are going to be. Sometimes we get out ahead of the roads, and how does that impact us, and what's the city's long term? So we work hand in hand with the city in determining some of our school sites. And another piece of that is when we work with the city is determining, is it the right location for our school? So sometimes the options are limited, but you got to look through that, because the wrong decisions can create a lot of costs to the taxpayers and to us as we build a school. Well, the very first thing is, once we identify the proper site, know the utilities are there. I mean, the biggest thing is to start shaping the site. We get to the building footprint, start putting utilities, the storm sewer, the sewer, the water, and those sort of things, get the infrastructure there. And then some of that infrastructure can happen as the building goes on, but right now we're doing the grading. We're just getting underway with the footprint of the building, digging for foundations and making sure that the building will stand and won't settle and those sort of things. But both of those sites are unique. The middle school and high school are totally different in how we're approaching the foundations. And in the last 10 years is probably newer to this area. It's called geopiers, where they're drilling drilling holes and putting rock in there. And that's the uniqueness that I'm talking about earlier, is that McGovern was done with geopiers, and the west side of the town has a little more clays and more, it's not quite as good a soil. So you spend a little money to do the geopiers under the foundation to keep it from settling and so forth. So it's a rammed gravel pier that you set up, where you have the bearing loads that you form over that. And it's really good. I mean, McGovern has been solid, no cracking, no anything. It's actually probably a step up from floating it a little bit. So they're busy doing that. They do about 70 a day. So they're just getting through the gym area at the new high school right now. So it's an engineered calculation at the bearing loads, how much you have to do and what you do, and between the contractor and our structural engineer, they determine how many they need. Jefferson, all the water stuff is in. They're working on subgrade of Terry Avenue. They're currently now working on storm sewer. So storm sewer will be going. You see the erosion control is all in, so you have to have erosion control during the process, but we've got sediment ponds and those sort of things that some of this storm sewer will now go to. So there's a lot of infrastructure work you'll see that goes on before you start seeing that building coming up. Same scenario. We've got the sediment pond built. They're putting in storm sewer now. They're actually starting over there. The soils are a little different. We're undercutting the footings instead of geopiers, because the soil bearings on that soil is a little better than the west side. But they have to undercut because the water table is a little high, and they've started that process where they put 2 foot of gravel under the perimeter footings. So that's started as well. So they're doing storm sewer. I see some of the water service stuff, manholes and those sort of things are on site now. So they're probably getting started with that. And then they're doing rough grading yet up in the football fields. They've got the building pad pretty well to grade. They've got the parking lot pretty much to grade now. So they're starting to do some of that infrastructure work. So, and now they're getting into some of the grading or the dirt work underneath, getting ready for footings. I always say is the most unknowns is when you're coming out of the ground. So the soils, and if you run into a pocket of something. So those are the most vulnerable times for us as an owner, I think, is when we're doing some of that soil, the dirt work and the infrastructure. In the parking lots, we're doing a newer process, is the soil cement. So you're able to eliminate some of that digging out soft spots where you bridge it and go over the top of it and stabilize it with cement and just grind up. It's a unique process. We've done it on 2 projects this summer for the district, Annie Sullivan and at Southeast Tech, that really gives you a great base, and it eliminates a lot of that unknowns that you might run into. Well, it's not going to be your typical, double-loaded corridors with classrooms down a corridor. There's going to be built-in learning suites. So you have a main corridor, but you have learning suites where you have 20 classrooms off those learning suites. And then you can have breakout areas that the corridors actually become usable in those learning suites that you can break out and have collaboration and those sort of things. So it's going to be unique. I think a lot of daylight, a lot of unique experiences for the kids as they go out. So it's a different process. Ben Reifel is actually a plan reuse of George McGovern. We were able to save about $500,000 in the engineering design fees by doing that. I mean, everybody likes that design. It kind of has that same flair of the learning suites. So it's kind of on that same cutting edge when we designed that. And we're able to take what we've learned from, because it's kind of Memorial and George McGovern. So we have the 3rd adaptation, and we've met with staff and tweaked it. So along the way, we've tweaked it. So we should have a really good, solid building. So take what we've learned and make it better.